with you of this panel discussion, which is Loyalty Surgery 2021, Loyalty in Transition, New Ideas, Fresh Thinking, and Brave Steps. So at the start, let me welcome our moderator, who is a business leader and specialist in setting up and growing sustainable and scalable organizations. He has a humongous career of over 3 decades, wherein he has translated various business plans into action and delivery with vision, processes, structure, and people. We have with us founder and partner, Strategic Caravan International Private Limited. Please put your hands together for Mr. Brian Almeida. He's on screen. Everybody, resounding round of applause. I can feel it. And I think Brian can as well, right? Okay, and our first panelist who's going to join us is somebody who was on our screen yesterday. You met her. She is a UK-based customer experience specialist and published author, and dedicated to cultivating high-value customer experience through data, design, and culture. Please welcome once again founder and director, Customer Experience, Cultivate Customer Experience by Design. Please welcome Miss Katie Sabler. Thank you for joining us again today. We next welcome somebody who guides organizations on how to gain market leadership through customer centricity. Originally from the US of A, she is now one of the foremost customer experience experts in Southern Africa. Please welcome Miss Julia Allfeld, customer experience strategist and business advisor. Julia Allfeld, CX Consulting. She's with us on screen and I think deserving of a loud round of applause. Welcome. Up next, we have with us someone who has over 27 years of marketing, retail, research and insights, consulting and training expertise, handling large teams and P&L responsibilities, VP Marketing and Customer Services, Head Loyalty and Shopper Insights, Reliance Retail Limited. Please welcome Mr. Jayant Jain. Welcome, sir. Now we're going to be inviting someone who has several years of experience in market research, customer engagement and experience, consulting across sectors, notably BFSI, e-commerce, durables and many others. Please put your hands together as we welcome Senior Vice President, CX Head, Hansa Research. With a loud round of applause, everybody put your hands together. Miss Piali Chatterjee joins us. Thank you very much for being here today. We have with us now someone who is an accomplished professional with 17 plus years of experience in customer loyalty, financial services, aviation and business consulting. Please welcome Senior Vice President and Head Strategic Partnerships, Intermiles, Mr. Vikas Chandak. Good evening, welcome, thank you for joining us. And finally, we have someone who has worked for more than a decade for leading organizations in pivotal roles. Adding to our panel, please welcome Senior Vice President and Chief Service Officer, OYO, Mr. Srirang Godbole. Welcome, thank you for joining us. All right, this looks to be exciting. The smiles are on, which means everyone's excited about the knowledge that they're going to be sharing. You know the way that this is going to be headed. It's definitely looking good. Handing over to our moderator, Mr. Brian Almeida, to take it forward.
Thank you, Keisha. Okay, everyone, good evening, very good evening to you. And a big thank you to the Customer Fest team for inviting me to moderate this very powerful and experienced panel. I'm sure for those of you attending this session, you're going to take a lot away from this session from the people around me today. Just to begin with, I think there's some small housekeeping which Jayant requested me, and if any of the other panelists need to make the statement. Views expressed on this conversation are personal of nature, and Jayant requested that be stated. If any of the other panelists also want to add that disclaimer to their statements, please do so. Yeah, so with that, we'll start off. In my recent book, Marketing in a Digital and Data World, I started with the quote from Peter Drucker, which said, "The purpose of business is to create and keep a customer." And the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of conversations about how business has changed, the digital world, the technology changes that are taking place today. And I think the way people talk to customers, acquire customers, offer channels of approach is changed quite radically in the last decade. And similarly, in the loyalty business itself, we've seen a significant transition over the last few years. Loyalty has proliferated quite a bit and has gone down to various brands across the board. And while it has become popular and easier to implement, this has also resulted in a standardization and templatizing of loyalty, which in my mind as a result has resulted in a lot of consumers saying this is transactional and very predictable. You buy something, you get a trigger, you're inactive for a few weeks and you'll get a trigger saying, we haven't seen you for so long, and why don't you come in, and why don't you shop at our store, all of that, right? And similarly, brands felt they had lost the ability to change consumer behavior. Now, this happens very often when you start to templatize and standardize stuff, and that's what technology brings. It brings you scale, it brings you standardization, but there's a lot of elements that come in with that as well. And therefore, across the globe, you see the topic about how brands need to move from, and programs, loyalty programs, need to move from transactional loyalty to emotional loyalty. And this has been a big topic of discussion across various brands and loyalty programs. And when you look at loyalty programs, the key focus is on identifying the most valuable customers, therefore, and recognizing them, right? And if for them, if at these valuable customers your experiences has a gap, then we have a problem. And I'm sure the panel here has a lot to say about how we can transition this. But I think that's some of the opening comments that I wanted to make. And moving on also in terms of payments and technology, a lot of that has become seamless. And I think when you look at the way some of the transactions happen, you have app in apps. You and I think Vikas and Jayant and Srirang will talk a lot about it, because you've seen them experiencing, offering some of these. You go to a Starbucks app and you can actually connect and see what you're doing on Flipkart, and you're transacting and getting Flipkart super coins, and similarly with Intermiles and so on and so forth. And also with payments, Citibank, American Express both offer pay with cash. You can pay with points and pay with cash together on a single transaction, so on and so forth. And a lot of this is changing the way customers are experiencing their whole relationship, right? So with that having been set as a context, I would, like to open up and maybe start off. I'll start off with Jayant from Reliance, and the audience in India probably has a great understanding of the way Reliance is impacting the population, whether it is telecom or fuel or retail. There's a lot to hear from him, but as he says, it's his personal views. So let's not, let's understand it with that context. Yes, Jan, do you want to start with
Thanks,
some
Brian.
comments on
Thanks,
it?
Brian. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel with all the people with such extremely interesting experiences. And greetings and welcome to the audience who's there on this program. What I would like to start with is, just taking a step back and asking everyone as to what was the purpose of having a loyalty program. What I've been seeing for quite some time now, and in various organizations, both as a customer and as a practitioner, is the fact that we are trying to make, transactions easy for our customers. We are trying to make interactions easy, convenient. We are trying to bring in efficiency. We are trying to reduce error. And to do all this, we have fallen back onto technology. And that's essential. Not to say that it's not needed, it's essential. Because one mistake and you can lose somebody. But to me, the purpose of loyalty or loyalty programs was to build a relationship where one mistake did not lose you, your customer. We've all been so worried about the fact that you get things right. We become super efficient. We become standardized. We've got templatized. We've got KRAs which measure things in very specific transactional terms. But what we've done in doing all this is lose the human touch. For me, as a customer, let me step aside and speak as a customer. What is the best experience that I've had? And just as a small anecdote, if you give me a few seconds. One particular bank, many years back, went out of their way, their service, relationship manager went out of their way to deliver a demand draft to me well outside their banking hours. And I was in urgent need of it. They went really out of the way. I still remember it, and I've forgiven that bank God knows how many other transgressions. And I'm still happy to be their customer. Now, that to me is what loyalty should be. That to me is what relationships are. I would want my customer to be a friend who comes back and tells me, look, this is where you're going wrong, get it right. And not threaten to leave me every time I end up making one small mistake. That to me is the real loyalty. That to me is the relationship that I'd like to build. So you'd like to throw the discussion to the others and we can come back to it? Or do you want me to...
Absolutely. I'll go over to Vikas next, and Vikas has had one of the most challenging years, I guess, transitioning from Jet Privilege to Intermiles, and I think they've done a commendable job on transitioning that whole value proposition. And maybe Vikas can talk about some of this with the audience and what he's seen. When the whole value proposition itself changed and Jet Miles moved out and Jet Airways stopped operating, the challenge of creating a new value proposition, creating miles that were incentive enough for the customers, and then of course moving to making them use and engage with them so that they didn't lose the customer base. So Vikas, you want to go with some of your comments on that?
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for welcoming us. And it's been a long time. I think you forget it's been 2 challenging years, not 1. COVID's been 1 year already, so we lost Jet much before that. I think I'll start by 2-3 very quick opening observations. I think Jayant sir mentioned very craftily that the relationship that was built by an individual has made him a fan of an organization, and that has led him to remain committed to that brand irrespective of some of the fallouts they might have had in the processes eventually, right? The challenge with an approach like this usually is how do you scale this up? How do you make this something that an organization can do at width and not just with one such customer, with one such employee, right? And I think that's one of the challenges that personalizing experiences and loyalty in general has as a concept. And I think the second piece, which is extremely important for us all to probably recognize, is every relationship starts at a transactional level, right? You evaluate the value in the relationship, you decide whether to invest more of your time, your effort, and your loyalty in this or not. And at some point, some of those customers and some of those concepts that you have offered to them become extremely emotional for them, right? And everybody finds the niche. The emotional piece is so personalized that everybody finds a niche, and it's extremely difficult to mass customize it. And therefore, I think the transactional bit is where you start the relationship, and over a period of time, you grow into the relationship. We, as an organization, actually had extremely strong emotional relationships with a lot of our members. And over a period of time, we realized that all loyalty programs, while loyalty programs themselves are a pyramid concept, that you address the top 20, 30, 40% of your customers maybe. Within the loyalty program itself, you end up having a pyramid all the time, right? That some of them are always more vested into your program than others are. Some of them are more vested into your brand than others are. And I think how you curate the relationship with the ambassadors that you discover through these transactional relationships, through these years that they spend with you, I think for us comes down to the crux of how you maintain these over a period of time. But I'll let the rest of the panel speak and then we can come back.
Can I throw a question to Vikas? Being
Yeah,
one of your customers, I'm still waiting to find out what the program does for me today, right? There's an interesting question here. Is a lot of these loyalty programs have started becoming just reward programs and trying to offer, monetary benefits in return. So, in some way, it's some sort of a discounting scheme, or that's what they've tried to become. But really speaking, it's the recognition that that program would provide to a customer that would have really held that customer in place. Now, airline loyalty programs typically have a very funny situation. There's a customer who's flying through their hierarchies and become one of their the best, whichever platinum, yay, whatever, some fancy terminology that they have. So he's there. Then he changes, he starts flying in some other sector, and his miles being collected are less, and all of a sudden the airline starts demoting him. Now, on one hand we talk about customer lifetime values. So here's this customer who's been with you for years, and now all of a sudden in 1 year he doesn't do, say, X number of flights, and you demote him to something. Where does that prestige and the care go?
Yeah, Jayant, I'm going to ask Vikas to hold on to that question and prepare for his answer. And in the round on, before I take first opening comments by various people, and I'm going to move over to Julia now and ask her to come in and weigh in on some of this. And my thought to Julia and also Katie would be, loyalty focuses on identifying and recognizing your best customers, and ring fencing them and make them loyal to your brand, right? And therefore, what are the challenges you foresee or have experienced now coming into this from a customer experience point of view? Are the guardrails that you would want to advise people about, and give the audience some guardrail elements that they could look for? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be, representing the customer experience perspective on this. One of a couple of people representing the customer experience perspective on this. So I think that loyalty is at a real inflection point. COVID-19 and the health crisis and the resulting social distancing regulations have really pushed consumers out of their normal routines and changed a lot of their basic wants and needs. Research by McKinsey from late last year showed that a whopping 96% of Indian consumers had tried a new store, brand, or way of shopping since COVID started. And that 3/4 of these consumers intended to stay with the new, brand or way of shopping or whatever product that they had tried. And it's interesting because India actually leads this global trend. So countries like South Africa, that rate of trying something new is more like kind of, 75%. So India's quite a leader in this. But I think that loyalty is no longer a currency that we can think about as something that's bought and sold through points or rewards. I think it's something that has to be earned through experiences that address a new set of needs and that meet consumers where they are, which is different from where they were a year ago. If services are no longer relevant, then customers are going to leave. And in thinking about experiences that will drive loyalty, brands need to consider a couple of trends. And I'm thinking, specifically about how the world has changed really in the last year. Because, we all know it's not going back to the way it was anytime soon. Firstly, we've got a more digital landscape for customer experience. So less is happening in person, more is happening online. Next, we've got a major economic impact. So in some markets like South Africa, this means an increased emphasis on value and essentials. And then also brands need to consider the fact that consumers, for a lot of them, home has become sort of the hub of their life. And this is where they live and they work and entertain themselves. So these trends seem to be sticking around, and they're having a profound impact on what customers need, as well as how they live, shop, and consume. So I think it's never been a better time to talk about loyalty and to talk about it in the context of experiences. So, how can we earn the right for loyalty instead of thinking about how we maybe buy it through points and schemes, maybe being a bit controversial and framing it that way. But how do we really, in this new normal, earn the right to have customers' loyalty?
Right. Thanks, Julia. And then over to you, Katie. You have a different perspective on that, on the customer experience. One of the views or interesting issues that keep coming up is, and particularly with the pandemic, and after you will go over to Srirang, the pandemic and the way people address the customer expectations and the ease of transaction, and that in itself was an experience that they had to face, right? The customer experience and how they handheld the customers through that. It's different when you're in a digitally advanced economy, but when you're in a country like India, there are people at different spectrum or different ends of the spectrum on use of digital technology, right? And how important, therefore, is the seamlessness and the ease of transaction, in the whole experience space?
Oh, I think it is so important. And I think there's a real theme from the conversation that we're having here around loyalty being something that is generated from experience and transaction and history, as opposed to, just a nice, shiny loyalty scheme in the side. And I completely agree with that. And going back to something you said right at the beginning, Brian, around, we use automation now to simplify and scale, and inadvertently it's really standardized and kind of set a monotony of tone across the customer experience. And I see that time and time again, and it's never been more obvious than now, when we're all so completely reliant on digital experiences, that a lot of organizations are just not getting that personalization right. And I think for me, one of the key elements of loyalty is feeling like an individual and not a number. You want to feel like you are somebody important to that organization. And there's so many ways an organization can make you feel like that. We collect so much data. We ask customers about their preferences, about their demographics, and we have all of this sat in the background. But so many organizations fail to use that. And I mean, let me give you an example in its most simple form. I buy regularly from a sportswear provider. I always buy female clothing, yet they continue to email me with male offers. And it's just an example of how easy that would be to get right, but how frustrating it is that they're not. So I think one of the key things for me around the digital experience is, yes, make it seamless. We want it to be as frictionless as possible. And in this day and age, there doesn't really feel like an excuse for it going wrong. But on the other side of it, use the data that you have, build out more complex automation, make sure that your marketing campaigns are hitting a personal note with your customers and just not something incredibly generic. And I think there's a lot of work for CRM developers to make that a better landscape for us all.
Oh, extremely valuable point that is. Yeah. And I'm going to go over to Srirang. Srirang has, talked about how the pandemic has changed the way Oyo has, reflected the way they treat and interact with their customers. Srirang?
Yes. So, Brian, I think before I talk about that, I think the first part of the discussion was really interesting, where everyone was talking about customer loyalty. I would just like to bring out a couple of perspectives on loyalty before I move on to how pandemic is shaping consumer preferences. I think when it comes to loyalty, often as organizations, we are very much focused on the end consumers of our product, right? So, for example, if I were to talk about Oyo, we have our end consumers who use our hotel services, right? But I think what is equally important in our ecosystem are our hotel partners, right, who are our merchants. So while we focus a lot on building loyalty programs for our end consumers, we often miss out on building very strong loyalty programs for our providers. Maybe in our case, it is hotel owners. Maybe in large sales organizations, it could be your trade marketing and distributors. And I think it would help organizations if they focus on all aspects, on all their stakeholders, right? Because your network is as strong as all the participants in it, not just, one part of the network. And the second part, I completely agree with what Jayant mentioned in the beginning, right? I think we tend to oversimplify loyalty programs, and we just tend to make it too much about points and price and, let's say, discounts. I think there are more nuances around it. I think we have to segment our of loyalty offerings, right? And it is not so for example, there could be a segment of consumers who are kicked about price, right? There could be a segment of consumers who are kicked about getting access to, let's say, rock concerts, right? There could be a segment of consumers who would say that for example, getting scholarships for the near and dear ones. So I think we need to tailor our loyalty programs, and moment we bring this perspective of having various stakeholders, it just makes the program much more richer. The second part, I think, around the pandemic and how it has shaped consumer preferences. I think I'm part of that industry which, along with airlines, has been hit the hardest, right? During the pandemic, right? You have had air traffic reducing. You have had the hotel industry also being hit, but I think it's recovering. So for us, I think this was an opportunity for us to accelerate a lot of efforts that we had on digitization. Because what would have taken a long time for consumers to get adapted to, that cycles shortened, right? Because it was more like exogenous factors at play. So what we were able to do, and what we experienced during this time was consumers started getting more and more comfortable with interacting with virtual assistants or chatbots, right? And I think you would have also experienced a proliferation of these kind of features across various organizations in the last 10 to 12 months, which also helps, to help, which helps to provide very standardized services to consumers. It helps to improve the overall experience, right? So I think the change. So while technology has advanced, I think what has always been difficult for us to do is how do you get consumers to adopt a technology, right? And I think the pandemic has hastened that. The second thing, and this is now pretty much the norm, right? I think it's the buzzword of contactless services, right? I think you had this starting off in April and May, where companies started innovating that, because of the pandemic, people are encouraging social distancing. People are saying that, no, we want to maintain a certain distance from whoever we interact with. How can I ensure that I check into my hotel and I do not really need to interact with too many people around, right? So it's not just the hotel industry, but across industries, you have seen more and more technologies being put into use to cut out somehow to make the processes very seamless, right? So how do you get consumers, let's say, to check into a hotel or maybe even check into a flight without passing through 3 or 4 stages, right? So I think this is something which has accelerated the pace of change. I think what we need to solve around over here, and again, that's a question to the panel, and maybe, I don't know whether we should do it or not, is now once the world starts coming back to normal, how will we ensure that most of these changes stay permanent? That's point number one. And point number two would be that the offerings that most of the organizations have created during this time, do you now segment it for various consumers, or do you still make it accessible to everyone around, right? So I think these could be some of the challenges that organizations could also have to grapple with as the world comes back to normal.
Super points, and that's a perfect setting to bring you in, Piali. With Katie and Sriram, as well as Jan, talking about making the experience more personalized and the communication more personalized, and moving away from just the points and the rewards that we talked about, or loyalty programs talked about all these years. Are you seeing that from a service provider point of view? Are you seeing that change coming to you from brands? And do you want to talk a little bit more about that? You're on mute, Piali. Piali, you're on mute.
Sorry for that. So first of all, thank you for having me in the session today. So of course, we see, we have the privilege of looking at various loyalty programs and the impact of these programs not only for one company, but across companies in various sectors. I'd like to give a small story before I kind of comment on this point. So, this is a personal experience. So one of the leading auto brands where I had given my car for servicing, and they had given a commitment that the car will be ready by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I land up in the showroom with my family, and we realize, and the person there tells us that, sorry, the work is not complete, and we would need another 4 hours. So there was no prior intimation. And he tells us that we would need another 4 hours before we could hand over your car. And that was really frustrating because I had my entire family with me. All the plans were made beyond that. So he could see that frustration on my face. And he said, give me a minute. He goes inside, talks to his manager. And within next 5 minutes, he comes back with 3 movie tickets from a mall, which was 5 minutes away. He tells us that he took us, he took one of the test driving cars, took us to the mall, and he said, ma'am, please enjoy the movie. It's our mistake, and this is a small service recovery for you. Please enjoy the movie, and after the movie is done, a car will be ready for you to pick you up from there, and by the time you reach our center, your car will be ready for delivery. In a matter of 10 minutes, they changed an unhappy customer to a delighted customer. They did not deliver. They did not deliver the main thing. They did not deliver my car on time. They did not intimate me that there is a delay. But in spite of that, they managed to do something which really created a delight. So the question is, all the programs, and without demeaning any of the loyalty programs, probably most of the programs which are designed, of course, they are brainstormed inside a boardroom, and of course, customer perspective is also taken. But if you look from a customer's lens, and if you see what the customer is looking at, a lot of times these small things, these small surprises actually delights the customer, and you can win the customer for life. So a lot of times we think of larger things, we think of larger investments to see that how we can have the customers. But these, so one of the important message from this story is, you cannot deliver that delight if you don't empower your internal employees in your organization, because they are the ones who are the face of your organization, and they are the ones who can create a difference at the end point. So, I was going through one of the sales, one of the data where, more than, and it was a very shocking number, like almost $100 billion loyalty points are left unredeemed. So which clearly indicates that our customers are seeing enough value in these points. So not that the customers would not like to redeem it, but is there something else which can win a customer for life is a point that I would leave to the forum. And what we see is, if I had to talk about some of the learnings that you would see across sectors. So, what we see, I think, Katie, you spoke about personalization. And, as you rightly said, there's a lot of data lying behind and so on. So today what happens is companies have started personalizing, but it is still mass personalization. Today, customers are looking at individual personalization, which is like for that. So a requirement of a millennial boy who probably likes playing soccer, who probably could be very different from a different profile. So today they're looking at individual personalization and how well we kind of come up with offers, schemes, or relevant point system is the crux of the matter. And as I always say that companies, the other important factor which can kind of create a delight among customers is the choice that you give to them. So today what we see is a lot of companies, and of course pandemic has acted as a catalyst, where we have started moving, or rather have done a significant progress from movement from the traditional channels to digital strategies and so on. But that's one side of the story. There are a lot of success stories, but there are also a lot of challenges. Like, for example, there are companies who may have implemented this strategy without even knowing the customer journey properly. So are those digital interventions relevant to all your customers? Secondly, having digital strategies similar for your entire base of customers may not always work for you, because the expectations are very different from case to case. So are we designing differential strategies for each segment, each profile is what really makes the difference, or can create a long-term impact among customers? So I will give others the chance to speak, and again probably come back. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I think, what a great first round and opening comments. It's torn my mind apart in a manner of speaking. And I get this issue, and I think this is the big challenge that loyalty programs face: is how do you personalize without making it feel like it's mass personalization, and how do you provide an experience which feels unique and customized or recognizable by that customer himself to make them feel special, whether it is in the digital mode or whether it is in the physical mode. And that's one of the big challenges, and it's the conflict between scale and personalization or customization, right? And the technology is attempting to bridge that gap and not make one the enemy of the other, but it is a problem. And I think the way I look at some of the issues that can be addressed is creating culture in the organization, and that's where, when you create the culture of service, of recognition, of understanding the customer, that's when you start to bridge this gap. I'm going to come now to Vikas. He also has a pending question. And just another issue which I want to address before I come back to Jayant, because you and Srirang also are the other big chains that address large customers. But Srirang, specifically on Intermiles, you made the currency very liquid and very ubiquitous in a manner of speaking. Was that thought through and deliberate to fill in the gap left by the jet privilege, the jet miles?
Yeah. So Brian, I'm assuming that was directed at me.
Yes.
So two things. I think I was wondering when it would be advisable to step in, but it would have been impetuous of me to think you would not catch it. I think the difference between a loyalty program and the overall service culture of an organization are, in my mind, actually very clear. And I think to burden a loyalty program with the entire relationship with the customer is actually an unfair ask. And I'm talking on behalf of proprietary programs here, not even coalitions. Yeah. So I think that is, it's not an either or. And I don't think any organization should have to make that choice or should try to. I think it is a must have on both fronts. To answer your specific question, and then maybe if time permits, I'll come to Jayant's question as well. In regards to Intermiles, I think we lost the ground presence when Jet went away, right? A lot of our benefit structures, a lot of our experiences, a lot of our prestige with regards to our top tier customers was associated with how they are managed and handled by our largest partner, the airline, right? And it's every FFP has that cut, which them a more emotional program for a lot of our members, like Mr. Jayant themselves, where their prestige, the exclusivity that it provides at the front end or at the moment of truth is extremely important to them, right? And fortunately for us, that was one part of what we did as an emotional connect with our users. The other part actually was the ability to still fulfill their aspirational vacation or memories they create when they are visiting a friend or when they are taking their family on a trip on their hard-earned miles, right? So what we decided to make sure is, while we cannot control one aspect of it, we lost the ground presence, While we rebuild that, in the meanwhile, we have to continue fulfilling our promise to our members, right? We have to make sure their miles are still valuable. We have to make sure their miles are still fungible, which means they can be redeemed and redeemed at multiple places. We actually opened up the entire experience to multiple airlines and multiple hotels, and now to dining, fuel, and multiple other places. The reason to make the currency fluid is to stop deciding for the customer what appeals the most to them, right? And the challenge with most loyalty programs, especially most closed user loyalty programs, closed user group programs, is we end up deciding for the customer what we think is valuable to them. So we decided to stop doing that decision for ourselves There are different pegs in the program. You can decide to accumulate for as long as you want. So not only did we make it liquid, we also made sure that you don't stop accumulating or you start expiring at any point, and therefore miles are evergreen. And that really was the choice. And I'll take a pause here before you want me to answer Mr. Jain's question.
So I'll move over to Jayant. Jayant, with Reliance, the question I have for you is, and I'll ask Katie to come in later on that from a Virgin perspective, if she has a view on it, is with Reliance Fuel and Reliance Geo and Reliance Retail, do you think you can extend loyalty from one experience to the other as an enterprise? And do you see that happening in the Indian context? We have the Reliance now, and we have Tatas, and we have the Birlas, and I see a clamoring of enterprise programs coming into play. Do you think that that's a good way to go about it for an enterprise like a Reliance or Tatas? And Katie, I would love to hear your views on what you think on the Virgin program. If you have a view on what Virgin is doing on creating its enterprise program across all the Virgin brands, and do you believe at all that you can extend loyalty of Virgin Music to Virgin Airlines, and so on and so forth? Yep, Jayant.
Interesting question, Brian. See, an organization with so many different product categories and services that it offers, can you have a single program that binds a customer? I mean, this answer cannot be given easily at one level. There are multiple levels to any set of benefits that a loyalty program should offer. I would look at it from a perspective, and Piali was very eloquent about explaining that, is, what does a customer want from you? Besides monetary benefits, besides certain amount of points, reward systems, efficiency, etc. Basically, a customer is looking for care. Basically, a customer is looking for respect, recognition, and excitement when he deals with you. That's where the relationship comes in. Even though Vikas said that, a loyalty program cannot be burdened with maintaining their entire relationship, but it's a very, very, significant phase of that relationship with the customer. Now, for a large organization with multiple companies, multiple outlets, and multiple transaction points, can you have one single program that offers this? The danger in such a thing is that you templatize and you just try to offer monetary benefits. But the other side of the story, the other side of the coin is you can extend the recognition that he's given with one particular set of, in one particular scenario into another one. If you can do that, that relationship can be deepened significantly. That requires a lot of effort. Besides all the technical backup, using data, machine learning, AI kind of stuff, you have to be able to empower the people who are there. The next time that, if you've dealt with an organization in one particular product category or service category, the next time you deal with them in another, and they say, look, we know you, this may or may not be the right thing, but because you are our esteemed customer, we offer you this benefit, or we rectify whatever discrepancy that has been there. We take care of whatever problem that you're there. What you're doing is you're showing the customer that he can trust you. You're building trust as an organization. If you look at the Tatas, their brands for the last 50, 60 years have been built on trust. They're a much younger company than that. Now, for us to be able to build trust across our sub-brands, our different formats is essential. But the danger there is what is interesting, what is exciting, and what shows care and respect to a customer who's buying groceries is not going to be the same as care, trust, and respect to a customer who's buying jewelry.
Right.
So if we have to try and make it into a pan-enterprise program, there has to be a significant amount of customization, personalization that comes in, and a huge amount of effort in empowering our people to deliver these benefits to the customers, which is where most large organizations will find maximum amount of challenges.
Right.
The decisions that a service delivery person has to make have financial impacts. And you cannot empower all your employees to be able to do that in all kinds of scenarios, which is where the customer finds you to be lacking. So there are huge challenges, but the advantages of being able to do this are very large.
Right. Katie, you have a view on that, or?
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, that's what Giant was saying there around the level of experience that you receive in perhaps one area of a brand to another. And I think you gave the comparison of jewelry store to grocery store, is right. But I think at a very basic level, there are a core set of standards that you would expect as an experience anywhere you go, from grocery store to jewelry store. But then moving up to the next level, I think as a customer, you wouldn't expect to have the same level of perhaps attention that you would in those different settings. So I think expectations are really important here. But from the reward scheme and the loyalty perspective around, spreading it, enabling it to cross across the brand widely, it goes back to what Vikas and I think Shirang hit on earlier around choice. Why wouldn't, as a loyalty scheme, you enable the customer to be able to choose what they see as their reward? And I think it's so important. I mean, just a very basic example is I'm a customer of 3 completely separate organizations who, as part of their reward scheme, offer me vouchers to an online paid streaming service. 3 completely different organizations, vouchers for the exact same streaming. I don't care about that. I don't need 6 movies a month. But I wasn't able to choose what my reward was. So I think choice is just so important. And if you can, not monopolize it, but if you have the capacity and ability to be able to spread it across your enterprises and to be able to enable your customer to have that fluidity in the currency, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'm going to bring in Srirang here because I know Oyo does a lot of partnerships and, brands with similar offerings and similar brands, and, the transaction from one brand to the other, Oyo gives you a lot of coupons which you can redeem and stuff like that. Srirang, how important is that element for Oyo?
So yeah, of course, in terms of the kind of partnerships or the kind of offers that we have for our consumers, a lot of it are to do with ensuring that we reduce the transaction value, right? Because in terms of a product, our consumers are price sensitive, right? So what definitely works with us is ensuring some kind of fungibility where consumers can either reduce the cost of transaction on our own app, or they can tie up with other players, right? So I think that's a very, very important part for us. I think the key challenge over here, and this is what organizations really need to do well, is to know which are those complementary brands for a particular target segment, right? So for example, if your target segment is for argument's sake between 20 to 25, and if let's say they are coming and purchasing a hotel room, right? So for them a complementary product would be something maybe in the cab space, right? Or something maybe in the fashion space, right? So what is extremely important when you have some of these partnerships is to have that fungibility across brands which have the same demographic, brands which have similar kind of use cases, or brands which have use cases which actually map into a user journey, right? So for example, nothing beats about a partnership between a hotel company and a cab company, right? Because often more or less these are very, very complementary. The other thing, and I love the part which Vikas talked about earlier, where he said that in Intermiles, whereas earlier it was you had to spend on a particular brand, or it was very, very brand dependent. You have given the power to choose to a consumer and transact across various brands. I think that's a fantastic idea. And when I was thinking about it, what tends to happen is that when brands like ours, we carve out our own loyalty programs, right? What is for us, it's very important for us to hit that sweet spot, right? Because when when let's say for example, if Oyo or some other brand had to create its own had to create a loyalty program, we want the consumer to come and transact with us on our own platform, right? Why would we want our consumers to maybe earn and redeem somewhere else, right? So I think that's an important consideration for us. And therefore, it's a lot of times, a lot of companies will always grapple with the question: should I have my own loyalty program, or let's say, should I go across to Vikas and tell him that, Vikas, I want to be a part of the Intermiles program. I'm obviously, there is no right answer for this. It requires a lot of thinking. But I think this is a very, very important question. And thanks Vikas for bringing in that point. It also made me see things in a very, very different perspective.
Okay, I'm going to change track and bring Julia in, Julia and Piali. We talked about offline. We talked about connecting brands with a social cause, and I think that's the other thing that's happening today. And a shameless plug for me, I run a charity platform called Points for People, and I see this trend from brands coming to us saying we want to connect with a social cause. And how important, Julia, do you think that is part of the overall purpose of brands that we are seeing as a movement these days?
Sure. I mean, I think it's something that we've seen globally as a trend, that consumers, particularly younger consumers, are interested in supporting brands or aligning themselves with brands that align with their values. And one of the things that we've seen since COVID too is also as people are, reevaluating what kind of brands they're engaging with, and as their needs are changing, they're exploring different options. It's also an opportunity for them to, reflect on this and think about, okay, well, if I've got two brands with two similar services, but, one of them I know supports a cause that is something that I'm really passionate about, then maybe I'm going to decide to go with that brand. And I think the important thing here is just for organizations to keep tabs on what their customers care about and what different segments of customers care about. In South Africa, for example, one of the big things during COVID has been supporting local brands. So people have recognized that local producers, local manufacturers and organizations are really the lifeblood of the economy, and there's been kind of a push to buy local and support local. And so some of the brands that have been successful during this time are brands that have said, hey, all along we've been supporting local, and here we are during COVID making sure that we're helping keep South Africans in their jobs and putting food on the table. And a lot of those organizations have been able to use that to attract and retain customers. So yeah, I think it's absolutely something important. But that said, it needs to be something that's quite authentic. I think customers will see straight through it if it's not. So make sure that it's authentic. Think about social causes that align with your organization's values and purpose. So it's about finding this balance between what's important to your customers and then also what aligns with kind of the soul of your organization's brand.
Great. Piali, you want to add to that? And Piali, you're on mute.
Yes, sorry for that again. Okay, so yes, again, there would be two perspectives to this too. And so the first perspective is, if I look from a company's point of view, it definitely helps in enhancing the way consumers or customers are perceiving their brand. So they may be perceived as a more caring brand or a more socially responsible brand. But at times, this may not, so it may work well for a segment of customers. But at the same time, as Vikas was mentioning, that they don't want to decide for the customer. This is what social thing is something, everybody has their own preferences, or they may have their own causes that they would want to support. So, to kind of completely get aligned to somebody else's causes just because a brand is driving a certain cause, at times may not work. And this is again, so there could be a section of customers where, they may not get so fascinated by that, and they would like to drive the cause that they believe in. But definitely, as a matter of fact, there is enough data, and we have also seen that companies or brands who have, have linked it to social causes. Definitely, there has been an increase on the perception of being seen as a socially responsible and a caring company. That has been, I mean, it's validated through data from some of the sectors that we have worked on.
Super. We're at 4 minutes to our deadline. We do have a question. And the question is, please suggest how do we have a loyalty program for customers who do not pay for services on time, especially in the utilities sector? And so any one of you want to take it up?
I can try.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's a very simple policy. It's a carrot and stick policy, and what happens is, if we are able to manage the me agenda of the customer, they will always be more motivated to kind of, so if we help them, they will be in a better position to help us. And again, I'll give without mentioning any names, but there have been cases where there are various ways. So for example, they get offered a discount if they pay it over a period of time. So if it is done in a staggered way, so which is like, you're addressing the me agenda of the customer. So he may not have paid, but if he sees that there is a benefit that he avails, if he ensures that he does timely payments, the chances are higher that he may end up paying that. So if we address the core concern or the core, pain due to which he's not kind of paying up, then it at times it helps.
And yeah, Jayant, do you think a prepaid kind of program? Or Jayant, please go ahead.
Yeah. In services where you've got monthly subscriptions, typically with phone connections, utility payments, what we've seen is a lot of customers, I mean, it may not be an intentional, plan not to pay. It's just that they've forgotten.
Right.
They don't give enough emphasis to it at that point in time. So what you are trying to do is have a carrot and a stick policy to get them to pay on time and get them to pay timely. If you pay timely, you get a certain amount of extra benefits. So a longer service period, maybe something else, or in case of, let's say, phones, you get a OTT connection free or something of that sort. That you're trying to reward them for just being punctual, timely, and remembering to do what they were supposed to do. It's not really a loyalty trick, but what it does is it still, it pushes your business objective, it gets them to pay up, and it also helps in building a further relationship. If you've given them, I mean, it's an opportunity to cross-sell in many ways.
Yeah. I think the thought that comes to mind is partner with NPCI's bill pay.
Well, there are, in fact, a whole lot of those partnerships have already happened. Yeah. COVID only accelerated those partnerships and brought about those facilities. These have been in the works for a long time.
Yes.
The COVID situation and the disruption here has only accelerated those kind of things. So those partnerships are happening all over the place.
Right.
You are going to offer customer those kind of, convenience and ease of payment, convenience of transaction. So these are all the things which will be there. I mean, it's part of the new marketing. It's part of the new digital marketing lingo.
Right. Okay. We are at 6 o'clock. I'm not so sure if they're going to allow us to extend, but I think this has been a great session for me. It's covered a lot of topics in different ways, and right from the issue of currency and liquidity to the customer experience and culture and partnerships as well. And it is what I see from the outside view in as to what loyalty is facing these days. I mean, it's become so complex in its engineering that it's very difficult to get the alignment in strategy right. And I think that to me is the biggest challenge that loyalty programs face. And we're seeing great programs like OYO and Intermiles and Giant with Reliance as well, all on the ground, and they're doing different bits in different degrees of success and intensity. And I think it's only a matter of time before, these move on to get the emotional loyalty with the customers we spoke about. Any wrap-up statements, anyone? Very quickly.
Yeah, I
I'd
think
just like to say this, that before we let loyalty be taken over by the tech experts, and in lots of fields, we are observing our IT counterparts and tech experts taking it over and giving it a completely different dimension. We need them. They are our service providers. But let's remember that we deal with the human beings. Bringing in the human aspect, especially that is emotional connect with loyalty programs, with marketing, with communication, is essential. Let's not give up the control of what we do with our customers to tech. Tech is here to serve us. It cannot be the do all and be all of all our programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Brian, I'll give a quick conclusion on my side. I think me and Jen sir need a session separately. I think we sit on opposite ends today. I think the more the control in the hand of the customers, the less the human interaction. The world's moving more towards I want to take in when I want it, how I want it. So it's not about retain human and not do this. It's about letting the customer decide. And tech's a great enabler and a bridge to that. But more importantly, for all loyalty programs, one of the most important things to remember is it's a two-way street. Reciprocity from the customer is as important as onus on the brand. And I think without that, sustainability of any program, whether it is in service culture or it is a loyalty program, is not going to be possible. And brands that do not recognize this will continue giving cashbacks, high value points, and redemptions to customers who are actually less loyal, more deal oriented, and will not remember what they really started off the loyalty programs for. So I'll just leave it at that.
I'd like to add my 2 bits to it. I think any program that gets made, one of the key ingredients is we should work more towards building emotional loyalty than transactional loyalty, because that is what is more sustainable. So how you build that connect and that emotional connect with the customer or consumer is more critical. And one of the key ingredients to build that trust or build that connect is to ensure that the programs are simple and, more importantly, transparent. Because most of the programs, you realize it only at the time of redemption that it's not an unconditional redemption. You actually are required to do something. And that's when you lose your customer, because that's when the customer feels cheated or probably wrong commitments being made. So very important, simple and transparent.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you Katie, thank you Julia, thank you Jan, Srirang, Piali, and Vikas, of course. It was great having you on the panel, and it was a very invigorating session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian. It was really interesting. And thanks to the organizers for inviting us for.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, yes, absolutely. A big thank you to all our panelists, to our moderator. Before we go, we've got this little ritual going. So when I say customer, you say FEST. All right. So I think, Katie, you had a chance yesterday, and I'm hoping that we can go forward with it today as well. Lots of energy, bring in the action, bring in the energy in your voice. Everybody good to go? Yes? You still have a little bit of energy? All right. So all our panelists, unmute yourself. Let's have your voices coming on out. And when I say customer, you say FEST, because we are at the Customer FEST show. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Customer
FEST.
FEST.
Woo! Customer
FEST.
All right, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us here today. And well, lots to take back. It has been an amazing day. You were the final panel that we had today. So thank you so much, our moderator, Mr. Brian Almeida, for taking us through this entire session and stitching it so beautifully together. Thank you very much. And to all our panelists, thank you for joining us and taking time out.